that's one of the problems, is they can be considered meat or pets. Are they pets or are they agriculture? Laws are geared towards dogs and cats. Everything's so vague about rabbits. Many of the shelters, like Animal Services or SPCA or Pet Alliance, they do not accept rabbits. We received over 500 requests to help over 800 rabbits in 2022. They weren't bred to fend for themselves. You cannot take a rabbit that they sell in a pet store and think it's going to live in the wild. Sure, it'll survive for a while, but it'll eventually die. The other thing is pet stores will often, they can sell them, I think, 10 weeks of age by law, but oftentimes they get them in at 8 weeks.
Usually on average we get them at about 2 to 3 months of age. I had many kids come up to me and ask me, what do I do to take care of a rabbit? And I give them the brief synopsis of, proper care, and they're like, that's a lot. Yeah, it is a lot, and something that they have to properly take care of. It is another living being that they need to take care of, and it's not going to fall into the parents' job to take care of it.
People think they're starter pets and they're not any work, and if you had one, they do require attention and work.
But a rabbit is probably what people like to consider a starter animal. Very simple to take care of. It's just a lot of cleaning, and there's just a lot of other stuff that is included with a rabbit that people don't necessarily acknowledge initially. But usually those are the people that are looking for it. It's just to start off, or at least get their child or themselves into taking care of a small creature. I would consider them a starter pet. They're fairly friendly. You gotta make sure you gotta give them a little space sometimes, and eventually they can develop a bond with you. And once that bond is settled, seldom come easy. So makes it a lot simpler for the long run, at least. Vets, they're not necessarily a domesticated animal per se. You would have to look for a specialized vet that takes care of like exotic animals, because it's not necessarily one that vets usually cater to. Cats and dogs are the most optimal for a vet currently, but exotic vets are a little hard to find, especially here in Florida. They're very, very dispersed, and it's not one that people can easily go to.
Pet stores are going to sell food, with all the colored bits in it and seeds. Rabbits cannot digest seeds. If you talk to any vet, they're going to tell you that's bad stuff. But there are no low-cost vets in the Orlando area that do it. There's one just opened over in Brevard County, or will do rabbits, but a lot of vets won't even treat rabbits because it's a specialty.
Rabbits are domesticated, so we do have domestic rabbit species or breeds, and so they are a domestic species, but they're not something that most veterinarians are taught in school about how to deal with them for the most part, and so they are considered more exotic, if you will, and so they kind of get lumped in with all the other species that are not your typical species. Rabbits are sometimes referred to as starter pets, although they do have some pretty specific nutritional needs, and they can be relatively difficult depending on some of the behavioral things they do, and so I would not term them as a starter pet.
All vet care is more expensive because it requires specialized vets. At one time, if you called for a spay, it'd be like $1,000.
Our clinic's been open about 4 months now. So far, since we've opened in mid-June, we have seen about 75 rescue rabbits from our local rescue groups, and we've seen about, almost 50 client rabbits that we've helped. So all those rabbits were pretty much seen for spay and neuter surgeries. So that was the primary reason that we saw them, trying to fix the rabbits so that we don't get more rabbits, because there's always a almost endless supply of rabbits, it seems like.
We can adopt them out at $90. That's kind of like the going rate, across the state. So every rabbit, we lose money. Even if it's a completely healthy rabbit, just spaying or neutering, and getting the vaccinations costs more than the adoption fee.
Well, the cost of spaying or neutering a rabbit is, at least here at our clinic, is relatively inexpensive and affordable, because we're trying to help people get these kind of things done and not have to break the bank doing it. Rabbit anatomy is different than dogs and cats, and so you have to know what you're doing so that you can do it right. But it is something that is pretty routine to do those surgeries, and it is a pretty straightforward procedure once you know your anatomy and you know the technique.
Residents are trying to raise some $20,000 to $40,000 needed to rescue them and get them to homes. The city of Wilton Manors has agreed to give the residents time after first saying the rabbits would have to be exterminated.
Oh, that's $40,000 so cute.
Though?
Wow.
That's a lot
What's
to get
tough
them new
because
homes.
rabbits duplicate very easily.
Good point.
Just saying.
Duplicate. That's a nice way of putting it.
Extermination is not something I would advocate for necessarily. I think what would be better is to get those rabbits into rescue organizations, get them taken care of for their health needs, and then have them adopted to good homes. Veterinary medicine in general is not just, some kind of secondary thing to like human medicine. Those costs are not insubstantial when it comes to rabbits either. And so it does get expensive to take care of these animals. And so if we take care of them properly to begin with, then we prevent a lot of those issues. In general, a terrible idea if you have a pet to just release it into the wild, especially here in Florida where they can usually find a way to live. It's detrimental to the environment here in Florida and the ecosystems, but it's also detrimental to those individual animals who are out there facing, threats and situations that they normally would never encounter. And it's not really fair to them to do that. So I would say that if anyone has an animal that they do not want any longer, that they should really seek out a rescue organization for that and surrender it that way rather than releasing it to its own accord out in the wild.
Uno came from a resident who was letting their bunnies run freely on the property and breed uncontrollably, and they were not being kept how they should be, safe from the elements, safe from the weather, safe from predators. And Uno was attacked by a predator. We don't know exactly who it was, but he had an injury to his eye. But thankfully the infection cleared up and we were able to fundraise and get him reparative surgery on his eyelid, and now he's all better. I'm Ashley. I'm the founder of Space Coast Bunnies. We are a rescue that started in 2019, and our goal is to save bunnies that have been dumped on the street. And the rabbit dumping has become so bad, especially since the pandemic. It seems like everyone ran out and bought pandemic pets and pandemic bunnies, and now we're seeing the consequences of that with a lot of unwanted litters, unexpected litters, and people that weren't ready for the commitment of a rabbit. And shelters aren't able to take them, and people don't know where to turn. They end up letting them go. So what we do is we rescue them and find them homes, and now we're advocating for pet stores to stop selling them and for backyard breeders to end the negligent breeding that's going on, allowing them to breed uncontrollably. The dumping problem is obviously cruel. Domestic rabbits can't survive outside or just survive out in the wild, because it would be similar to expecting a poodle to live outside in nature. They were bred hundreds of years ago in Europe, and these are specialty companion animals. They are not native wildlife.
We are at 100 and we're trying to get it down because it's just too much for us to be able to manage financially and logistically, because we don't have a facility. So the rabbits are all over Central Florida. I mean, we have them in St. Cloud to Deltona.
The commissioner at the time that introduced the dog and cat ordinance raised the concern that if we added rabbits, that it would be a slippery slope, and then you would have people advocating for other species to be included in pet store prohibition as well, such as bearded dragons. And my counter argument to that is, well, we don't have a bearded dragon problem in our neighborhoods. Should that arise, that would be something to be addressed, but rabbits are the third most abandoned pets, and so therefore we need to do something about it. I would love to change the perception about rabbits, that they are boring and that they're simple starter pets and that they can just live outside in a hutch. We're really trying to educate and overcome that negative perception of them, because they really are loving and friendly and enjoyable pets to have, just like a dog or cat, and they should be a part of the family, and they have a 10-year lifespan, and they aren't recognized for the intelligence and enjoyment that they bring when people are caring for them in the improper way. But this is really something that shelters need to be aware of, especially around Florida and in the South, that this rabbit problem is growing and we need to get ahead of it.
So why won't the commissioners do something? I think it's not important. I mean, I've had friends tell me to my face, Kathy, if you told me that you're going to waste my time as a commissioner on rabbits, I would say you're crazy. There's so many important things, but I guess they're important to me. They're important to a lot of people.